Here to spend a little time with you this evening going through J2534 Reflash and how to turn that into revenue for both a shop and a tool distributor. So a little bit about what we're going to cover this evening, and we're going to start by talking about J2534, what it actually is and how it's another tool in the diagnostic toolbox. Not the only tool in the toolbox. There's still, the basics of automotive technology that come into play, but J2534 is a growing part of the of diagnostics. We'll also talk about exactly what J2534 reprogramming is. We'll give you a definition of that. We'll talk about scan coding. There's a lot of confusion out in the marketplace over what J2534 is and what it is not. Scan coding is actually something that many times gets confused with J2534 Reflash, so we'll give you a little definition on that as well to try to demystify the process a little bit. We'll talk some on J2534 and the return on investment when you make an investment in the equipment. Probably one of the most important things we'll talk about this evening is who owns the pieces of J2534. What does a shop or a technician need to be able to get into this growing part of his business? When would he do it and why? And then we're actually going to go through a Chrysler reprogramming process flow. And for the sake of time this evening, we just picked out one manufacturer, which is Chrysler. We'll actually go through some screenshots to show you the actual process and how it works. We have a longer presentation that actually covers Ford and GM as well. So if we were going to do this in front of a actually do a training forum for a group, we could tailor this to either cover one of those three makes or all of the makes, and we'll talk about some of the other things that we can actually do in a forum as we get further into the presentation this evening as well. Let's start by talking a little bit about the benefits of J2534 and how it would actually affect a shop that were to choose to get into this business. Obviously, there's an additional revenue source. And that revenue source is done by, or is gained by, reflashing the computers in a customer's vehicle. And there's many reasons that you might do that, and we'll talk again more about these as we get further into the presentation. Another one of the important benefits to the shop is customer retention. A lot of times when a computer needs to be reflashed, the shop will send it out either back to a dealer or to a competing shop, and then they're basically just giving dollars away to their competition or back to the dealer. And then if they make the commitment to J2534, they can also solicit business from other shops that haven't yet embraced J2534. And probably the most important thing to remember in all of this is that in many cases, the only way to make repairs to vehicles these days is via a reflash. There are some things, and just as an example, there's a Nissan Altima that has an idle problem. The only way to solve that idle problem is by reflashing that computer. You could chase that around the vehicle for weeks trying to find a mechanical fix, and there is no mechanical fix for it. So those would be the benefits to the shop. Benefits to a jobber, whether it's a plate glass jobber or a mobile jobber, there's several different benefits. Now, one of the obvious benefits for a parts store would be the computer modules and related parts that could be sold with it. For either a plate glass jobber or a mobile jobber, there's J2534 capable battery chargers, which we'll get deeper into as we get into the presentation as well. In addition to that, if they're going to be in Reflash, then they're going to need higher level scan tools capable of coding functions. Also, as a side benefit to a auto parts store, J2534 being done in the shop generally means that it's a higher level technician that's doing it. Going to be a better diagnosis. There's going to be less comebacks, less return parts, which is a big deal for a parts store. Also gives the store a shop that they can refer customers to. If it's a DIY that comes into the store, now they know a shop that they can refer somebody to that actually has the capability to perform this functionality. And one of the other things that's growing in the market with the number of controllers that are out there, even when they're being being sold now, most of them are coming in without any programming in them. So before they can even be used in a vehicle, somebody has to put that initial flash into the computer to make the computer function. So those are just some of the benefits to a jobber that gets involved with selling this product. So let's look now and look at what a definition of J2534 reprogramming is. And probably to break it down to its simplest terms, for you guys that have been around the business for a while, you may think back to the days of the old GM PROMs, which were programmable read-only memory. And basically, when you wanted to change the information in that computer, it was a mechanical process where you took one PROM out and GM sold you a new PROM and you dropped that one into the vehicle. Well, basically what we're doing here with J2534 Reflash is it's the same process, but instead of that mechanical process of lifting that PROM out and dropping a new one in there, we're just electronically blasting a new calibration file into the computer. So we're taking that computer and we're changing the information that's in there and how it controls what happens in that vehicle. So for Reflash or reprogramming, we're electronically putting a new file into the computer to change the vehicle's characteristics of how it runs. The other part of the Reflash is reflashing or flash programming new ECUs. So a new controller needs to be put into a vehicle. Either it's been damaged in an accident or the controller has just gone bad. Before it can be used in the vehicle, it has to have the information to control that vehicle. GM, for example, uses the same controller on many different vehicles, but the flash that's in there or the program that's in there is different based on the vehicle that it's going into. So you have to be able to put the right flash into that controller to make it actually control the vehicle the way it's supposed to. So Reflash or reprogramming are kind of the terms that are used interchangeably, but Flash really is just about reprogramming a computer to change the way the vehicle characteristics operate. So let's talk a little bit about scan coding, and this is where some technicians and some shop owners get a little bit off the rails here when we start talking about some of this. Coding is an enhanced scan tool function. So for example, it's like a bidirectional control where we take control of a motor and actually activate that motor. When we're talking about coding, we're talking more about I've replaced a window motor regulator and now I need to make that window motor talk to the body control module, so there's a code that I have to put in to make the two pieces operate together or to make the body control module recognize that new window regulator. So the difference is that we're not reflashing anything, we're just making the two pieces interact with each other. We're saying part A, talk to part B, here's the code that you need to be able to work together, really is what we're talking about when we talk about coding. Now the important thing and where it gets a little bit more confusing is that coding can also be required before or after a J2534 reprogramming event. So for example, again on a Chrysler, sometimes after we reflash that module, we then have to go in and put the VIN number or the VIN into the controller to make the vehicle start again. So sometimes even after a reflash, there's still something required to make that vehicle run again, even though we've properly reflashed the vehicle. So coding is a different process, requires a scan tool. This is kind of where our higher end scan tools, whether it's our Genesis Evo or our Pegasus, come into play. They have many of the functions in there, but I will also warn you that there are some coding functions that are available only through a factory scan tool. For the most part, we've tried to put as much coverage as we can, and that's where we continue to add coverage every year as we roll into our new pieces of software for our scan tools, whether it's Genesis or Pegasus. But there are still some that are OE only and may require a trip back to the OE or an OE scan tool to be able to do that particular function. Also, when we're talking about J2534, there's actually two different parts to J2534. It's J2534-1 and J2534-2. When an end user is looking to purchase a Reflash device, a J2534 device, make sure that they're purchasing the right one. There are some in the market that only cover J2534-1 because that's what the standard required. So that would cover emissions only, and basically at that point you're limited to the engine control module, power control module, and transmission control module as part of J2534-1. J2534-2 is a second part to the standard, and it allows you to work on non-emissions related subsystems, so body control, ABS, some of the additional modules that would be there in the vehicle. So it allows you to reprogram a non-emissions related module on a vehicle if the OE makes that information available. In most cases, most of the OEs do make this information available, but it is up to the OE whether or not that part is available. 2534-1 is the required information. 2534-2 is still somewhat optional for them to make that information available. Many of them do make it available, but again, it is up to them. So why would you want to, or why would a shop want to take on Reflash programming in their shop? This is an example, and hopefully you can all see this, but this is an example of a technical service bulletin for a Ford. And this particular one is on the 2010 Taurus and Flex. And the issue with this vehicle is some 2010 Taurus, MKS, MKT, and Flex equipped with gasoline turbocharged direct injection engines and built on or before 10/14/2009 may exhibit diagnostic trouble code P0096 intake air temperature sensor 2 circuit range performance on bank 1. This may occur when the engine is at operating temperature and the vehicle is shut off and then restarted within 5 seconds. So that particular action sets this code. The action, or the fix for this vehicle, and the only fix for this vehicle to solve that problem, is to reprogram that powertrain control module using the latest release. And it's covered under warranty for Ford, but that doesn't mean that an aftermarket shop can't do it. The point here is that Reflash and Flash are generally TSB or module replacement driven. So the customer comes into the shop, they describe this problem, they find this technical service bulletin, and the fix for this vehicle is to download the latest calibration and put it into that computer module. That would be the only way to fix this vehicle. So that's kind of what would drive a Reflash event. So for a shop, Reflash can be profitable when they understand it. The issue is that many of them right now do not understand it. And we've, as a little side note here, we've put together training forums that are available. I know we have some MEDCO employees here on the call, and we also have, I believe, some jobbers on the call here. We've put together a training program where we will actually come out and put on a training class, a training forum for your customers at no charge to you. And we actually do this, the best way to do it is in a classroom environment, but we actually now have got it set up where we have wired up some GM controllers where we can actually do the entire Reflash process just like we were connected to a vehicle in front of the classroom and display it on a screen so that everybody in the class can see it. So we can help you with this as we go through it. So the goal here is to try to help you understand this better so that we can help you help your customers understand it better. For the jobbers that are on the call, if after we're done here tonight you have interest in this, please reach out to your MEDCO salespeople. We'll be happy to try to set up some forums in your area, and we will send the folks in. There's no cost to you. We just want to get in front of your customers and be able to present this information. So the first question we would ask the shop owners is if they're flushing profits down the drain. And what we mean by that, are they giving business to the OE dealer or other aftermarket facilities that are doing programming procedures? So, and then we take them through a little cost scenario here, and we start with the national average labor rate, which is $76. And the cost of their labor per hour, so they're billing 76, and of that 76, 32% of it is going to what they're paying their tech. And then in addition to that, they're probably, on average, selling $33.50 worth of parts per hour on a vehicle. So they should be billing around $110 an hour if they're, when they're working on these vehicles. So again, we take them through a little scenario here. A vehicle comes in with a symptom. Up front, if they're a smart shop, they sell the customer up front 1 hour of diagnostic time for around $76. We go and we find the TSB for the new calibration file to fix the symptom. And now we send the vehicle back to the dealer for reprogramming. The dealer charges the shop $120, but now I've got to have 2 techs to take it to the dealer. So 30 minutes there and back times 2 techs, and it's probably 1 hour is more realistic. We have to send 1 tech to pick up the other, or we've got to tow it to the shop, so tow trucks don't run for free either. Then when they're done, we send 2 techs back to go back and pick the vehicle up from the dealer. We've got 30 minutes invested there and back again. We give the customer back to the vehicle, and we charge them the $76 that we charged them for diagnosis. And then we upcharge them a little bit for the reprogramming, so we charge them $130. So we give them a bill for $206.40, and we think we've done a pretty good job for our customer. But if we break it down and look at it, the cost of sending it to the dealer actually was $106. We've got $24 of 1 hour of technician's time to diagnose the vehicle, which is basically the 32% of the $76. We've got 2 techs to go to the shop, so now we're up to $48.88. We've got $33.50 lost in parts that we didn't sell, and then we've got $120 that we paid to the OE dealer for the reprogramming. So basically, we have $226 invested in this reflash, and we've charged the customer $206. So we've lost $20 on this transaction today. Customer's probably happy. Might not be so happy if he finds out that it was sent out to the OE dealer. Next time he might just go to the OE dealer. But in this case, the shop has basically lost money on this transaction. If we kept it in-house, even if we charge the same amount, we bill the customer the $76, $130 to do the reflash. We've got $47 invested to diagnose and reprogram the PCM. We've got the $35 charge for the OE website for the calibration file. And yes, the OEs do charge for these calibration files. We've got 1 hour of the technician's time to diagnose the vehicle, and then 30 minutes to reprogram the controller. So that technician that worked on that job has made $159.48. Technician 2 was able to stay on the brake job that he was working on. So we've got the money that he made. So basically he's made $85.46. We've got a total of $244 that we've made. So would we rather be $20 in the hole or $244 to the good? Now they do have to invest in equipment. So they are going to have a Windows-based computer to be able to do reflash, and then they're going to have a J2534 pass-through device. And we're estimating that around $1,500. The computer expense can vary. I've talked to shops that actually have a couple of different computers that they keep one for GM and one for the other vehicles, or if they're specializing in something, they'll have one for Toyota and one for GM, and then they'll kind of rotate those through. And one guy told me he actually sells them off about every 6 months on eBay and buys new ones, so he always has new ones in the shop. But basically, we've got 9 reprogramming events. After they make the investment, basically they've paid for their investment and keeps the customers in their shop and makes them money. And by the way, they're actually moving forward and getting into the latest technology to keep them current with what's going on in our industry. For you guys that have been around the industry for a long time, you probably remember, as time has gone on, when electronic ignition first came out, there were guys that said, well, I'm just not going to work on those. And then when ABS came out, well, I'm just not going to work on that. Refrigerant had to be recovered. Well, I just won't work on those. They've just not worked on those and put themselves right out of business. And so to keep current, they really need to step up with the technology. In my opinion, shops that don't embrace this technology are, within the next 5 years are probably going to be looking for another career, because this is the future. This is the way that the market is going. This is becoming a bigger and bigger part of the diagnostic process. So then what we would do, we move in and give them some basics of the process. And the first thing is we always want to baseline the vehicle. So we want to make sure that we have a properly operating battery. If we have less than 12 volts in that vehicle, we're going to have a problem when we go to do that reflash. If we have a bad ground, we're going to have a problem. So they always want to baseline the vehicle, check the cables, connections, grounds, make sure that they have the proper voltage during the reflash. If the voltage drops out, there's a possibility that the reflash isn't going to take and could possibly damage the controller for good. Then what we cover is who owns which part of the process, because this can be a little bit confusing as well. So if we start at the beginning, the OEMs actually own the J2534 software application and calibration files. So they come up with these application files. They then sell them or make them available to the aftermarket repair shops. The automotive repair shop needs to own the download portal, so they have to have an internet connection to be able to download the information into their computer. The OEMs own the PC minimum specifications and Windows requirements. So they don't, I'm not saying that they own the PC, but there are minimum requirements for the computer, and each one of the OEs has a slightly different requirement for the computer that you use to do the reflash. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get further into it. Aftermarket tool companies like OTC provide the pass-through device. So we provide the pass-through device, the J2534 compatible device. We meet the SAE standard. That's what enables the computer to actually translate that information into a usable form and then get it back into the vehicle, and the OE actually owns the vehicle. So our point here is that we are just one piece in this process, the J2534 pass-through device. But generally, because we're the ones that sell them this particular device, we're usually the one the finger gets pointed at if something goes wrong. That's part of the reason that we're trying to educate the consumer on the way this whole process works, and the shop owners and the jobbers, so that everybody understands where each one of these pieces fits in the J2534 process. So what else is needed to do flash reprogramming? Well, first of all, I already mentioned we need to have a PC or a laptop that meets the OEM requirements. We need to have access to the OEM website to be able to download this calibration files. Again, every OEM handles this differently. I'll show you a slide here in a minute that actually lists the different OE websites that you go to get the information. Some of them require a subscription. You actually have to go to each OE website to determine how they make this information available. For example, Chrysler is by the VIN number, so you buy them one flash at a time. With Ford, you buy a window of time, and GM is the same way. GM used to require an annual subscription. They've recently changed it where you can buy a window of, I believe it's 72 hours at a time to be able to access their calibration files. So then you download the proper OEM software application if required, which again enables your computer to talk to that VCI. We have to have a constant clean voltage to the battery plus. The reason for that is, again, if the voltage were to drop below 12 volts during the reflash process, you could have a problem with the reflash. So if the battery's fully charged, in most cases you probably won't have a problem, but if somebody were to go and open the door and the light came on and the voltage dropped below that 12 volts, you could have a problem. So we do recommend a clean power supply to the battery to maintain that voltage during it. And some of the manufacturers actually recommend different voltages, some of them as high as 14 volts during the reflash. We also have to have a PC to the internet connection and then a PC to the VCI or vehicle communication cable connection. We do not recommend wireless. It is possible to do it wirelessly through our devices, but wireless is not recommended. It's okay to download the information from the internet wirelessly to the computer because it won't transfer until you have the full file, but when you're going from the computer to the vehicle, wireless is not recommended, because if for some reason it gets corrupted in the middle, you could end up with a problem with your reflash. And then we have to have the VCI connected to the OBD2 connection and follow the instructions on the website and the PC. This is one of the most important steps, and where we've seen some issues is that the technicians or the shop owners will either miss an instruction or try to shortcut the instructions. You know, I guess as guys, we're all guilty of that, trying to make things faster. But don't skip steps. When there's steps, they're generally for a reason. And where we've seen folks have a problem with doing a reflash is when they do decide to skip steps. The other question that comes up, particularly when we're talking to the shop owners, is what happens if we have a reprogramming failure? And eventually, if they get into reflash, they will eventually have a failure. It's just like anything else. You know, anybody that's been in business for any amount of time has never done a brake job where they haven't had a problem with it. So they're going to have a failure with this as well. In most cases, the failures are recoverable. So we can just go back and start the process over and reflash the controller a second time. There's other times where it may not be recoverable, and they maybe have to replace the controller. The trick here is to not get discouraged or have a fear of the reprogramming. Going forward, again, this is going to be the only way to fix many vehicle defects. You know, there's not too much that goes on anymore that's not computer controlled or monitored. We started putting together some information for an undercar training class, and you know, we thought it was going to be more about strut tamers and things of that nature. But it really turned into electronics as well, because there's not much going on under there that doesn't have a wire going to it that either controls it or monitors what's going on. So going forward, this is going to be the only way to fix many problems in the vehicle, and I'm not just talking about drivability problems either. And occasionally, misdiagnosis is going to happen. You know, they may think that they've found the problem with a technical service bulletin. Well, maybe that doesn't solve the problem. So there's still, this is not the fail-safe, and not the only thing that they're going to have to do when they're trying to diagnose vehicles either. They will need to confirm via the OEM website the computer specifications required to reprogram. As I've mentioned already, all the OEMs have different requirements. Some OEMs have different Windows operating systems requirements. Some still are using XP. Some have moved on to Windows 7. The thing to keep in mind here is that these requirements change constantly. And it's not driven by us, it's not driven by SAE, it's driven by the OEMs and the way that their software is written. So generally, you can buy one computer to do all of them, but depending on what they're getting into and which vehicle, they may have to have a couple of different computers in the shop to work on different vehicles. Again, driven by the OEM, not the J2534 pass-through device provider. The slide that I have up here now actually lists all of the different websites for reprogramming. This slide is actually available at www.nastf.org, which is National Automotive Service Task Force.org. And basically it lists out all of the different websites. This is where you would go not only to get the calibration files, but also to get whatever information is needed to actually make it possible to download those information. And again, they all do it a little bit differently. The one thing that we do try to tell shop owners when they're going to get into J2534 is this is not something that you're going to decide on Monday night that you're going to start doing reflash and Tuesday morning be in business. You need to do some homework ahead of time. You need to understand how these things work. And some of these websites can be a little bit confusing the first time that you go into them, and I'll show you some examples here in the Chrysler example that we're going to go through tonight. But NASTF.org always has the latest website information available. They can just use this, bookmark it, and then it will take them right into the individual manufacturers. In a lot of cases, there's a lot of information that they can get for free off of these websites as well. Volkswagen, for example, has a ton of information that you can actually access, and you don't pay for anything until you actually go to buy the calibration file that you're actually going to use to reflash the vehicle. The other website that's available that has the information listed is OEMOneStop.com, which is also part of NESTF.org, where they can click on it and see the different websites that are available for the OE information as well. I mentioned earlier that you need to have a clean voltage supply when you're doing a reflash. We've just recently introduced a new clean power supply that also will charge batteries, but this provides a constant power, and the big thing that it does, it's different than an old style battery charger, is it controls the AC voltage ripple. Want to have as little noise going on in the battery and in the charging system while doing reflash. So even if it's not ours or others out there on in the marketplace, just make sure that it is a newer style clean power supply that's being used and not an old style battery charger. So when are we going to do a reflash? Well, the vehicle comes into the shop, and generally, as we mentioned already, it's technical service bulletin driven. The technician retrieves the fault code, reviews the service bulletin, which requires a reflash, and then the technician reflashes the PCM. Or the technician reviews the customer's drivability issue, reviews the service bulletin, which requires a reflash, and then we go ahead and reflash the PCM. Or we install a new PCM, and a flash is required to actually make that new PCM usable. Now, one thing that we also point out to shop owners at this point is that if a customer comes in and is not complaining about a drivability issue, just because you find a new flash that's available doesn't necessarily mean that you want to flash that vehicle without talking to the customer first. The reason for that is that if it's a problem that comes in that maybe the vehicle is using too much gas, or maybe you know, it's some other drivability issue, once you reflash that controller, there's no going back to the way it was before. So if the customer isn't unhappy with the way the vehicle runs, you might not want to change it unless they're complaining about that particular drivability issue. And just some examples of that is with that one where maybe it's using too much fuel, it may change the shift points in the vehicle, or it may change the way the vehicle idles, and the customer might not like the result after you get done. So just because there's a reflash available doesn't mean that you automatically should put it in there until you talk to the customer first. So here's an example now. The technician pulled up this code, and basically what we've got here is a screenshot from our Pegasus scan tool. And we've got a P0106, alternate fuel engine control module, manifold, absolute pressure sensor performance. And again, in many cases, the only way we're going to fix this is through a reflash, and these are some of the different things that we can correct using this reflash, whether it's an engineering correction, we've replaced a component, part of the diagnostic process, you know, we're changing the way something idles. We've got poor performance, we've got a check engine light that's coming on, we've got components that are failing early, we've got drivability issues, emissions-related problems, many more. So again, that code would generate a technical service bulletin, and then we would go ahead and do the reflash. What we're going to cover now is I'm going to take you through some screenshots of actually what would be required to do a reflash on a Chrysler. And basically where we would start is with the website navigation. We'll talk a little bit about a PT Cruiser and then some of the hurdles of programming a Chrysler. Again, every OE, even though J2534 is an SAE standard, every OE handles this a little bit differently. So we'll cover some of this information on Chrysler. Most of the OEs are going to be similar. Again, a little bit different. The J2534 portion is part of a standard, but it's not like an edict, so every one of them does it slightly different. So if we were going to start with a Chrysler, the first thing we would have to figure out is where we would get the updates. So we would go to www.techauthority.com and register with the Chrysler website. This is where the calibration files are available. We would have to have a current paid subscription to the Tech Authority website. So this is the screenshot. If we were to go to Tech Authority, we would go up here to the top right-hand corner, and we would click on Register, just about like any other website that's out there where you would go and register. Create your new account, put your password in, all of the information that's there, again, pretty much like any other website that you would register on. It would then tell you that your account was successfully created. Click Next to go to the home page. And then we go to the login. We would log into the system. And we log in using our email and our password. And then we would go to online subscriptions. When we go to online subscriptions, you can see up here in the corner that it's $35 for the subscription. We add that to our cart. Then go to My Subscriptions. Click Start Now. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing. You would have to scroll down this page, and this again is the reason that we recommend that the shop owners, when they do this for the first time, make sure that they've done a little bit of homework before they do it, because now you would scroll down to the page, and actually going to take us to the next slide, and we would download the J2534 system. And then we would download until we find the install file, which currently, or as of the time we put this PowerPoint together, was j4.04.18.exe. We would click on that. Then click on, you may have to turn off your pop-up blockers and antivirus applications. Then we would activate the J2534 server, open the application, and there's an important note here that the green dot must be on down on the system tray to let us know that we're actually communicating with the Chrysler website. Now it's telling us that we can't find the password adapter. You must select a new adapter. So then we would go in and we would pick out the VCI that we want to use, and this is just a list of the ones that were available. We would pick out SPX Device 1 or SPX VCI. And then you pick which vehicle it is, whether it's a 2010 or 2009, because the process is slightly different. Again, just some notes here from Chrysler. The new J2534 application supports model year 2010 or later vehicles only. Use the legacy Chrysler J2534 Reflash application to service all model vehicles year 2009 and earlier. We would then use our scan tool to identify the VIN number or the calibration ID using mode 9 in our scan tool. Again, just a little note down in the right-hand corner, the green dot must be on to move forward. That's a repeat of a slide. Now we're going to come back to this slide and load the flash matrix to download the file. Now Chrysler has a lot of recalibration files, and sometimes you'll look up the one that you have and then it'll point you to another one, and then you have to look that one up and it's going to point you to another one. It continues to take you through the screen to get to the one that you actually need. At this point you select the flash file. You must have the part number of the ECM or PCM. Again, you can use mode 9 to get that information, or you can get it off of the controller. You download the file onto your hard drive on your PC. Once it's on your PC, the software application will find the file, and when it's ready to start the flash process. Again, we've downloaded the calibration file. You can see the different part numbers and technical service bulletins that actually apply to these controllers. And then once we've done that, the programming actually begins. And the actual programming procedure, depending on the vehicle, can be a matter of seconds to a matter of minutes. Again, depends on the OE. There are BMWs that when you go to do a reflash, it can take up to 18 hours to actually do the reflash because it reflashes every computer in the CAN system. In this case with the Chrysler, it's usually just a matter of seconds that it takes to actually transfer the file into the controller on the vehicle. So once we've done that, we're pretty much good unless we have a failure. If we have a failure or a programming error, the computer gets connected, somebody walks by it and yanks the cord out. Chrysler actually allows rewriting a module with the same calibration number or a previous calibration number. So what I mean by that is, let's say that we start programming with this calibration file for, let's say it's a 2010 Chrysler 300. Something happens in the middle. We can then go back and reflash that same controller with that same reflash, with that same information. Some manufacturers, once you reflash once with that particular calibration, you cannot reflash it with the same calibration. You have to move on to the next version of the calibration. The TSBs that we have listed here are actually from Chrysler's website, and they apparently have even recognized that there are errors that happen. They have 25 pages of error recovery information that's available via a TSB. They also have powertrain control module initialization and some other information that's available right on their website to help with the process when you're trying to get through the reflash if there is an error. The other thing that's going on with Chrysler is that Mopar is currently phasing out pre-programmed PCMs, meaning that if you go to the Chrysler dealer and say, I've got a 2004 Caravan that I need a controller for, they're going to sell you a blank controller. So they're basically planning on phasing out all the pre-programmed ones, meaning that the controller will not work in the vehicle until it's programmed. And a diagnostic trouble code will be set, and basically what it's going to tell the customer is that it's not programmed. Important note here is that while Chrysler does allow you to reflash a controller, you know, if I've got a 2004 Caravan, I can continue to flash that controller as a 2004 Caravan. What I cannot do, however, is that once I've programmed it as a 2004 Caravan, then go and change it to a 2004 300. It can only be reprogrammed to a more recent version of the released calibration. You can't change the vehicle on a Chrysler. On a GM, if it's the same part number, we can actually change from a Buick Rendezvous to a Pontiac Grand Prix as long as the part number is the same. On Chrysler, we cannot do that. So it's important that we don't just randomly select the calibration. We need to make sure that we're selecting the right one for the right vehicle with the right features that that vehicle has. Then once we've programmed that new controller, we then have to do a VIN write function to put the VIN into the controller so that the vehicle will then start. And then again, depending on the vehicle model year, if the vehicle has a SCIM module in it, and what the SCIM module is the Chrysler security system that they used for a few years, you have to actually write a 4-digit SCIM code into the vehicle as well. As of this moment, Chrysler SCIM modules have to require a factory tool to put that code in. Now, there are some workarounds that are out there, and we don't profess to know all the workarounds, but there are some workarounds that are as simple as disconnecting the SCIM module before you do the reflash and then going through the whole process and then putting the SCIM module back in line, and then it will never know that it was disconnected. But really, that's information that they're going to have to get from an information process. We're not recommending one process or the other, but there are workarounds to the SCIM module for Chrysler. We're going to go into this PT Cruiser, and this is just an example of a vehicle that that we came across when doing a reflash. We like to show these to the shops because it actually gives some credence to some of the things that they've seen or might see. In this case, this is a 2004 PT Cruiser. Symptoms of this vehicle: the engine fan turns on the instant the key is turned on, regardless of the temperature or of the engine or coolant. Once we get it into closed loop operation, it doesn't go any faster than a normal person walking. It backfires, it bucks, it kicks, it dies. The shop has attempted to replace the engine wiring harness, the coolant temp sensor, the solid state fan switch, both O2 sensors and the catalytic converter. It's been to the OE dealer twice, and the PCM has been replaced by the dealer twice, and the vehicle still has a problem. So then we asked the class and what they think might be wrong with it, what's wrong with the vehicle. Obviously everything under the hood has been replaced, and we still have a problem. In this particular case, if they had gone to the technical service bulletins, they skipped part of the diagnostic process. The solution was actually there the whole time. In this case, an aftermarket shop found the fix for this and was able to do this reflash when the OE dealer could not figure it out. Didn't follow the procedure, and then missed the TSB about how to actually do the procedure. This aftermarket shop was able to fix it, downloaded it, reflashed the controller, customer's happy, fan works normal, car drives fine. You know, the conclusion here is the parts didn't need to be replaced. And what happened with this particular vehicle, the original controller failed due to a faulty seal, allowed moisture to enter the PCM. The controllers failed because the replacement controllers failed because the PCM was not programmed properly using that technical service bulletin. So even the OE dealer missed that. In this case, this aftermarket shop was able to solve this problem with this vehicle because they were able to do reflash in their shop. It was as simple as being able to do reflash and do it properly from the beginning. So the takeaway here is it's important to check the TSB and not to skip those basic diagnostic procedures. As I mentioned early on in the class, we have some training materials or training classes that are available. We're also offering a trade-in promotion right now on our Genesis kits on our 3874 and 3874 TPR. For any shop that buys one of those and sends us in an old scan tool, we will send them back a J2534 reprogramming device, our 3829, or if they already have a reprogramming tool, we'll send them our tech scope. So we've got a pretty strong promotion going on. So if we can get them to come to the class, if they're interested in either upgrading their equipment or getting into reflash, we have a couple of different ways to get them into reflash. This is just one of the promotions that we have going on right now at the time. We also have until the end of the year for any, and this one is probably getting towards the point where it's not as valid as it was a couple of months ago, but anybody that were to buy 2011 software right now would get a $250 cash card back. Where you'd want to be real comfortable right now with your customers is we're probably less than 45 days away from the 2012 software coming out. This is still available, so if you've got somebody that's looking for a bargain on 2011 software, there is still this particular promotion available, but probably would want to be real careful with how you presented this one to your customer. And even though it says September 30th, that one actually has been extended through the end of the year. With that, I'll open it up to questions, Bob, if we have any questions.
Yeah, Bob, I think at this point in time, if you have any questions, feel free to type those in. If you're in a situation where you're not able to do so, please reach out to your MEDCO salesperson within the next couple of days, and we will be more than glad to answer any questions that they have. Those questions can be forwarded to either Bob Hall or myself. The other thing that we also encourage you to do is reach out to your MEDCO salespeople, once again, to inquire about the forums and basically how our team here at MEDCO can work with you on getting this information to the street, helping you put on forums and clinics, which number one will help provide solutions to your customers, and here again also help you in the sales of products that are related to the electronic diagnostics. At this point in time, if there aren't any questions, we can adjourn for this evening. Let's see here. I did see one come through. Looks like Roger. Bear with me here.
While Bob is looking for that question, I just would like to thank everybody for attending this evening, and thanks MEDCO for the opportunity to participate in this event. Happy to be here, and as Bob mentioned, if there are questions afterwards, feel free to get a hold of Bob or myself. We'll be happy to try to get your questions answered, and anybody that's interested in setting up some training for end users or your shops, will be happy to try to accommodate that as well.
It looks like one of the questions that came through was in regards to technical service and additional support. Well, what is actually available?
Can you repeat that again? What's available?
As far as additional services, you know, here again we do have the forums and the clinics that we're able to provide, but is there a tech service line? What additional services are available to the customers? We
do have our tech service line available, which is more for functionality of the tool or an issue with our portion of it. Most of the OEs have their own tech service that's available via their websites. So it depends really on what the question or what type of tech support it is. In addition to that, we do have our we have 7 technical sales specialists out in the field, plus our rep agencies that also provide tech support. You know, if we're going in to talk to a customer about getting this set up for the first time, we can offer some assistance with that. I guess it really depends on the type of technical support that we're looking for.
Okay, Bob, at this time it looks like that's the only question that has been posed so far. So at this point in time, we will conclude our webinar for this evening. And as we said, please don't hesitate to reach out to your MEDCO sales personnel in regards to what additional services are available and any other questions that you may have. At this point, I'd like to thank Bob for taking time out of his evening to spend some time to educate us furthermore on Reflash programming, and we'd like to thank everyone who did attend and participate in this evening's webinar.
Okay.
So with that, I will wish you all a good evening, and look for further information coming from MEDCO on future MEDCO University seminars, which will be coming up over the next several months. We do have seminars relating to our paint and body business, and we will have some additional seminars in regards to electronic diagnostics. Once again, thank you all, and we hope you have a good evening.